Okay, do we want a little picture of me? Maybe we do. Here's a little picture of me. I'm wearing a hat and a scarf because I'm in my studio and it's cold. All right, we're going to do a little test run of this. And I'm going to show you some of the pages from the workbook that's coming your way. If you're in the Threshold group, trying to figure out a way to set up a situation where I can share this with everyone in some ways, and then certain things with the people who are in the Threshold groups who want to be members or who want to get the workbooks. All that being said, that right now the workbooks are only available in this Threshold group, which is a beta test invitation only situation, but I'm happy to share the astrological information with everyone. And hopefully you can give me feedback on if that's helpful and if you understand it. And then eventually this workbook will be launched to everybody. Probably not in my imagination until September of next year in 2023, but who knows? Still trying to figure out the best way to utilize this information, which is from basically my workbooks that I've used over the last 7 years. Well, five in this format specifically. As I was in astrology school and developing my practice, I sort of came up with these pages in my journal to keep track of things. And some of this has elevated to astro professional level. And, you know, that's fine. But most of this is meant to be used as a learning tool. So the first thing I always like to say is, like, don't expect to understand this quickly. This is not a 90 days to freedom situation. If anything, it's more of like a lifestyle choice that you have to make if you want to connect to this stuff on a regular basis. And then obviously there's a level of connecting with me and the way that I deliver content on top of that, but not to get too far into the details. I just want to say, I'm going to kind of go over an overview of what the Sweet Astro newsletters and the Threshold group and potentially what will hopefully become the new community. There's no word yet. It just looks like this will be. After leaving the Mighty Network, because it was too hard to use, I'm trying to figure out a way to share this information in a way that makes me happy to make it and you happy to receive it. So I'm rolling it way back to like a really basic, it's a blog, it's a newsletter, it's a workbook, it's a Zoom class situation, and hoping that makes it a little bit easier. So this is going to be a very email-driven situation. So if you're not in the Sweet Astro newsletter, you can definitely subscribe to that on my website, and you'll start getting these videos and these blogs in your emails every day. But the workbooks, again, are only available to this testing group, but they're super connected to this. And you can start to use this concept in a journal if you want to. And then eventually, like I said, when this is available, it'll be available. All right. I think that's enough camera of me for now. Okay. So this is what the newsletter is going to look like. And then this video that we're currently making is going to, sorry to turn that off, is going to have the video in it. Sorry, brain slip. So the video that I'm making right now will eventually be here in the middle of this. But I wanted to go over this kind of just like step by step, this being the beta one. The first one in the new series. So this blog is set up on my website. It does have restricted access. So if you get the newsletter, you'll get access to this blog. If you don't, then you can watch this video and you can see it, and hopefully that's helpful to you. But until you subscribe, there's no way for me to give you access to this because a lot of the stuff is behind a restricted membership application. Okay, anyways, here's what it looks like. So each week I create this chart of the week, which is just kind of showing you like where the planets are going to be for this week here, December 12th to 18th. So this is a page from the workbook, and we will fill this out with the dates. But I wanted to show you the second page, which looks like it's basically this chart redrawn here. And so what we're doing with this graphic, which just seems kind of like innocuously hanging out until we know what it's for. So what it's for, how it's meant to be used is that you pull this up and you can look at it. And then in the workbook or just in a pie chart in your journal, you draw your chart over here. And so we choose, this is a digital version, which will also be available once this is launched. We choose to draw our chart on here, right? So we're drawing our chart. So you would draw your chart. And again, if you don't know how to look up your chart and you don't know how to draw your chart, then that's information I can share with you. Hopefully by this point, you know that, or you can figure it out. And if not, there is a blog I can share. So just send me a message and I can share that with you. So let's say this was your chart, right? So you're drawing your chart here and you have choices, right? Like this is set up with all of these different sections for somebody who's maybe has a little bit more to keep track of, AKA me. But you don't have to do it the same way that I'm doing it. The main thing is that you draw your chart at least within this circle area so that you have this circle area to draw the transits on there. Okay. So let's go a little bigger just for the sake of the visual and pretend that this line is not here. Okay. So let's say we have Mars here at 15. We have Saturn. Oh, we have the ascendant at 26. Descendant 26. Saturn at 27 retrograde. We have the the IC is at 3. Pluto. Uranus. North Node. Neptune. And again, this is going to be in your journal. So the point is to continuously draw your chart regularly. I can't say this enough. Like if you don't draw your chart and you don't get used to using the glyphs, it's going to make learning this process a lot harder. It's just bottom line. There's no other way around it. Whoops. Sorry, it's hard to do it and concentrate. So let's say this is your chart, right? And actually, I'm going to move this in a little bit. Burp, burp. So you'd be doing this in your journal. DC. Right? And these are the degrees. And again, if you've done this, if you've pulled up your chart in like astro.com or whatever, you're just going to copy what you see. And again, if you haven't learned your glyphs, then you can write Pluto and Uranus until you get it. But the sooner you start drawing your charts, the sooner you're going to understand the reason for the symbols is shorthand. That's all. It really helps us be intricate about that. So if we're looking over here now, what we're going to do is we're going to sort of look at where the planets are in the sky. So this would be our chart now. This is where things are in our chart. Oops. And this is where things are in the sky. So we're going to match them up. So we see that this person has Mars in Gemini, and Mars is currently also in Gemini. So if we could even change the color if we wanted. Now we're going to put Mars in the sky here, and it looks like it's traveling between 12 and 14. It's retrograde. So it's going this way. It's going between 12 and 14 degrees this week. So it is sort of interacting with this, right? And then we're just going to go around from here, and we're going to look at, and we're going to see there's nothing in Cancer, nothing in Leo, nothing in Virgo, nothing in Libra, South Node in Scorpio. So we're going to find Scorpio in our chart. And the South Node, it looks like it's at about 12 degrees. And there's 30 degrees in every one of these signs in whole signs. This is why you want to use whole sign houses instead of like Placidus or any other feature. Okay. So you're going to try to guesstimate. Again, don't get too nitpicky about it. Once they're, within a few degrees of something, there's energy being shared there. Sagittarius, we have the sun between 20 and 26 degrees right now. It's coming. This is the last week, so it's getting done. 20 to 26. And you don't have to put the degrees. I just ask you to look and see, like, if it's moving between 20 and 26, that means that by Sunday, it's going to be conjunct your natal descendant. So this is why we draw the charts. Okay. This is why we need to draw them regularly, because it gives us the visual of understanding the aspects. If everything is just written out and the degrees are just written out, if you don't understand the aspects and you don't understand the astrogeometry and the algebra, it's going to be really hard for you to point out when things are engaging with you. Like, for example, we've got Venus moving between 2 degrees and 10 degrees. So it is engaging this person's Venus and their moon. And then we have Mercury also in Capricorn, which was moving between 5 and 16 degrees, right? So it's right here to right here, right? So it's also going to engage this moon. It gives us this visual sense, right? And then we have Pluto, which is at 27. It's moving direct. We have Saturn, which is at 20, also moving direct. We have Neptune and Jupiter. This is at like 22. This is at 29. Also direct and direct. And the direct and indirect, you can see in the thing with the little arrows here. Okay. So you can see they're going this way and this way. And then this is retrograde. So we have Chiron at 12 degrees, which is moving retrograde. We have the North Node, which is also at 12, is always going to be opposite of this. Boop. And then we have Uranus at 15, which is also retrograde. So now that you have all the planets drawn on here, when you move down and you start looking at this, which is showing you the, these are all, again, written in glyphs. I'm not going to spend time translating when we have things like this. Here's a glyph key right on the page that you can go to and double check yourself and be like, what is that one again? What is that one again? Groovy. So here we see Monday, the 12th. We have the sun sextiling Saturn at 20 degrees. Okay. So when we come back and we look at, what is this? Let's make this go away. Thank you. We can see where those are happening. So we see the sun here. Okay. And we see Saturn here. And again, this doesn't have anything to do with our charts when we're just looking at these aspects. A sextile happens when things are at the same degree and they are 2 signs apart. So you've got 1, 2. Okay. So this creates a little bit of ease between these two. Okay. And we don't necessarily at first, it's kind of like when we are learning a language as children. We see a lot of pictures of an apple, right? And there's an A under it. And then eventually there's apple as the word under it, right? Then we start to tell a story about the apple. The apple is red. Oh. Okay. So there's all these different ways in which we learn things through setting up these sort of like foundational steps. And that's what we're trying to do here. We're not trying to get too heavy at the beginning. Like, you are where you are and there's always more you can learn. And I never stop learning. There is no end to this. So this is the most important lesson of like dismantling the fucked up education most of us received about how we're supposed to master every fucking thing that we see and get in touch with. And if we can't, then we should leave it alone. That is not true about astrology. Astrology is very subjective. It's very creative. And there's a lot of like just playing around and being open and flexible that will help you get to your specific understanding of this. Okay. So one of the things that we can do when we're looking at transits is we can just get a sense that like something is happening between the two. And if it doesn't pique, one, if it doesn't make you curious, if you notice it's not really on anything in your chart specifically, if you're not having a Saturn year, you don't really even understand what Saturn does, you're not really sure like what to do with transits, then ignore it, right? You can even just be like, I'm not even going to write this in my thing. I'm going to skip it, right? Because now we see this whole list here, right? And what is this list here for? Well, this list is here so that you could, if you wanted, if you felt like you were ready, you could start filling this out. So we have the 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th, 16, 17, and 18. And the matching here from this little glyph and this worksheet is here. So you see you've got Monday Moon, Tuesday Mars. These are the planets that rule the days of the week, right? So the dates aren't really a big deal, although this will change every single week, aren't really a big deal with what this is for. What this is for is a cheat sheet to help you fill this out, okay? So as we're looking at the cheat sheet in the newsletter, we can take our page out and we can be like, okay, the moon is in, that's here. So we've got the moon is in Leo. So we can write that in our book, okay? This one says Leo. Then it's Virgo. It moves into Virgo. And if we wanted, we could put the time. Again, don't get too caught up in the details unless they mean something to you. Unless they make sense to you, right? If it's there, just because it's there doesn't mean that you have to pay attention to it or that it means anything to you. The time is only important if you're timing something. If you're trying to figure out exactly when something is happening. Okay? If you are also, or if you're looking at your chart too, if you're looking at your particular chart and you know that when the moon enters Virgo, you turn into a monster or a baby or something that you don't like, you become very expressive, or you feel really good. This is a time that you're trying to pay attention to, then this really matters. Like you're like, oh my gosh, by the time I wake up on Wednesday morning, the moon's going to be in Virgo, and this is a great time for me to do X, Y, and Z. So I want to get the most out of it. Otherwise, fuck it, right? Don't overcomplicate it. Don't get obsessed with the stuff that doesn't make sense to you. You know, if you picked up any book as a 6-year-old in first grade and started trying to flip through it, it wouldn't make any sense. It looks like a bunch of jibber jabber and a bunch of weird little marks on the page. It doesn't mean anything to you. You might be able to identify a couple of words, right? But there's no sense in making yourself feel bad about that. That is not what this is for, okay? So the first thing that we do is we fill out the moon signs. So on Thursday, right, Jupiter's day, here, the moon's in Virgo. And this is just how I do it. Again, you know, as you get to understand these symbols and move through things, you might have a different way of doing this. And then also if you're working with like an actual, this paper book that's coming to those of you in the Threshold group, then you're going to be writing these down in your book if you want to. But again, the digital version may be something that some people really get into. I know that I've moved more towards that just because astrology has a lot of books and I carry a lot of books around and I'm like, oh my gosh, they're so heavy. It's so nice to just have everything on my tablet. But not that I don't also love a paper book for coloring. That is one part that I do love. Okay, so Friday, Venus Day is the 16th. The moon moves from Virgo into Libra. And this is important because today is the last quarter moon. So I just draw this here. I didn't make a specific place for it because again, not everybody needs to be getting super tracked on all these things all the time. But I did write the details down. So it's at 24 degrees. So if you are having a moon year or you're Cancer rising or you have a lot of Cancer placements, or you just feel super attracted to the moon, who doesn't? I'm a Cancer rising. I'm in love with the moon. So the reason that we want to note that this is the day that's happening is because if we come over here, we can look at our Virgo house. We can put the moon on here, right? Now we know the last quarter moon is at 24 degrees. And we can look and we can say, well, I don't have anything in this part of the chart, so that's good. This moon isn't on anything. Good or bad, okay? Let's use the word curious. If it's not on anything, then chances are you're like, oh, I don't really need to be terribly curious about this. However, you can look at then things that are 3 signs away are what's called square. Whoops. Boop. Right? You can see, do I have anything at 24 degrees here? Or just start opposite. Be like, okay, do I have anything opposite? Well, I don't have anything in my chart opposite, but all of this stuff is opposite. That's interesting. It's basically, this moon is basically hitting right in between Neptune and Jupiter and Pisces. And again, the only thing that's important is if once you write this down, you say, that's interesting to me. I feel curious about that. And now I want to dive into a rabbit hole. Okay. Now I'm like, oh, okay, I must know what this means, right? This is when we discover what the universe wants us to know. This is an intuitive situation, right? If your reaction is, oh my God, I have no idea what that means. Okay, never mind then. I don't care. Next thing, right? Like if it's not causing me to be curious or making me feel like I need to learn more about that, then ignore it. It's that simple. Like, this is the thing. We don't need to know everything right away. We need to move slowly into keeping track of this for a while. And then we can get to the point where we're like, okay, now I understand what a Libra means, right? I understand what it might be like to have this plus this plus this times this. Okay. Otherwise, it's just getting comfortable with writing it, getting comfortable with looking at your chart. Oh, and again, this is actually mostly a Libra moon day. And then it moves into Scorpio at like 7:30 at night. That's the other reason to know the times for the moon is like, if it's, when you have the day where it changes signs, if it's like, doesn't change signs till midnight, then Libra is the moon most of that day. So it's just a matter of getting comfortable with like what flavor is going on. Okay. So that's the moon stuff. And there are other almanacs and workbooks that you can get. There's going to be a big part of learning how to look this up in the Threshold. That is a separate workshop from the weekly workshop where we go in and write down the transits of the moon. But one of the things that you can do if you want to kind of get curious about this, like, are there more colors? I think there are. Oh, yes. So for example, we're looking at this. We see, this also tells us this week the moon will travel through Leo, Virgo, and Libra. So we know the moon is going to move from here all the way to here, and it barely goes into Scorpio. Like it dips in. So we get this whole like part of our chart being lit up by the moon. Okay, so again, if you're Cancer rising or you're having a moon year or you just love the moon and you want to use the moon for tracking, which is very good at helping you with that, you can see like, well, what is the moon going to go over in my chart during this time? Not a lot for this person. It's pretty chill. What houses is it going to go through, right? So we can see it's going through house 3, 4, and 5. So we can say like what might be up for us during that time would be themes for the house, right? And again, if you don't know all these things, 1, you can just Google it. And 2, you can go to the Astro 101 section. If you need help finding out information, you can always email me. And you can just start figuring out what is the 3rd, 4th, and 5th house for me, right? And this is going to be different in everyone's chart, which is why we draw our chart first. And then we add the transits on the outside. Because that gives us a sense of what is this going to do to me? What is the impact of this on me? And if we just focus on the conjunctions, like when something touches something at first, that's totally great. Eventually we wonder like, well, what else is it doing? And we move out from there. Okay. So that's the next part of this part is we can see the larger planetary transits that are happening in the sky. And we look at those in the chart. Okay. And then we get a sense of tracking to see, well, what could this mean for me? But also, what does this mean in the world, right? A lot of what I'm going to write about in these sections is going to be about what I think could happen under those transits or what are some of the useful things we could do under those transits. But it's good for you to, and again, with every horoscope or prediction or post that you read, it's good to know how to look at this in your chart because it's going to flavor differently, right? If we're just looking at this transit in a general way, the Sun square Neptune, we are talking about, this sort of intangible thing. Like what is the sun square Neptune generally? What is the sun in Sag square Neptune and Pisces generally? Right? Those are all legitimate things to be thinking about, how this might affect the world. Right? We're looking at the sun, right? And we're looking at Neptune. Okay? And Neptune has like here, like Neptune has more of this like blue color. It's very cold and wet and swirly. And the sun in Sagittarius is, you know, it's a fire sign sun, but it's deep and it's emotional. It's emotional about the world. It's emotional about learning and freedom, and it doesn't like to be restricted. It has a lot of passion about adventure, and it's sort of, you know, bad at telling jokes, and it's a little awkward and weird, and it wants to be moving around all the time. And so when these two come together and they make a square between each other, there's this tension between this need for adventure and freedom. And then Neptune brings in this kind of like, whoa, that's kind of too far, you know? It's like when you do too many drugs or you drink too much and all of a sudden it goes sideways. Like the fun kind of loses its reality a little bit, its direction, right? It can make us feel like we don't want to go to work every day. We just want to dance around and be silly, right? We get this square tension between what it means to be free in a culture that is so fucking controlling and so obsessed with making sure that we don't get too free, right? This is why, you know, psychedelic drugs are illegal, but alcohol is fine, because it slows you down, right? It makes you tired. It makes you sick. It poisons you. Where, you know, a lot of other drugs that give you that sort of sense of freedom or sense of, you know, lack of inhibitions, I guess, expands your mind, but you don't usually wake up feeling as shitty or hungover from like mushrooms or psychedelic drugs as you do, or marijuana, even for that matter, as you do alcohol. So that's just a sidebar tangent for what I think those things are following those patterns. The other really interesting thing, and again, this is an Astro 201, but again, the more I talk about it, the more one day you'll be like, oh no, I get it. Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter. It's the most powerful planet in that sign, right? It shares this vibe and resonance with it, and it's in charge of things in that house. And it also rules Pisces. So you've got two Jupiters in tension with each other here too, or they're magnifying this situation. So this week, you know, is going to really push us. And I talk a little bit about this, you know, like the purpose of laziness or daydreaming, or just being like one of the words that comes up here for me is lollygagger. Like somebody who's just like, ooh, you know, but you're not being frivolous when you're oohing. You're not like, oh, a squirrel. You're like, what is it? You know, what is existence? What is the world? What does it mean? You know, what does it mean to be this person or to feel this way? It's like, you're not just sitting down looking at a butterfly. You're sitting down looking at like a butterfly and then wondering about a life cycle of a butterfly and, you know, the profound metaphor connected to this metamorphosis. And, you know, you're kind of getting all philosophical and heady about it. And yeah, does that happen when you're high? Totally. Right? Totally. Especially if you're curious at all, which is generally. But then we have this one happening, but then we also have Mercury, which is here in Capricorn, coming to a square with Chiron. Right? And so we also want to know, like, where is this happening in my chart? For this person, this is happening, the Sun square Neptune is happening between the 7th and the 10th. So that's another layer of like, does this person want to go to fucking work and bang out a partnership agreement with somebody and negotiate a contract and worry about their reputation when the Sun is square Neptune in their chart in this place? Fuck no. In fact, they're probably struggling with like the fact that people think of them as somebody who's, you know, a certain kind of fucking way, right? And again, whether these are just the transits on the outside, these are not our natal transits. So they cause us also to like think about things that we may not normally think about. And then whether they're on something in our chart or not. And so for this person, there isn't anything that is touching directly. And same with this Chiron square Mercury situation that's happening this person is not having any direct transits from this. But if you are, then there's another layer of figuring out like, okay, well, how could this impact me, right? So the best thing to look at first with transits in the sky is what house are they happening in for you, right? What sign is it, but what house is it for you? So for this person, this is an 8 to 11 square, right? So this is thinking about their identity, their hopes and dreams and the secrets that they keep, the things that they kind of hide from the world becoming more important in their identity, and really giving this tension between pretending to be somebody they're not and who they want to be, bringing that out and looking at it in a more serious way, communicating about it, but then also looking at it from a Chiron perspective. And that Chiron's purpose is to make us look at things that might be uncomfortable, or make us do things that might be uncomfortable, because they're gifts for us. That's a gift in there for us. That's something that we're intentionally supposed to lean into to find a tool or a gift for us later in life. Okay. So that's what this part is about, right? And so we're kind of merging. We could write these things here if we wanted. What planetary transits are you tracking? And I usually put the one that is happening in the world on this line. Whoops. Yeah. Oh no, sorry. That's the sun, not Mars. I wrote it Sun Sag, sextile Saturn in Aquarius. And so you're basically just copying this. But if you're not ready to write the glyphs, when you watch these videos or you read the stuff, you could write Sun Sag, square Saturn, Aquarius, or the whole word, right? Like you could write it out so that you get a sense. And then what do you think that might do? So you can listen to what I'm saying and you can sort of write your own notes, or you can listen to what I'm saying and notice, oh, that triggered something for me personally, right? Or you can look at it in your chart, right? You could be like, oh, this is happening between here and here. This feels important to me. What are some of these themes for these houses? What are some of the themes for these signs and these planets? The keywords. And again, this is why you want to join the community. This is why you want to join the groups that I'm hosting, because I'm going to give you all that information. I'm going to help you walk through those processes. But perhaps you're like, more versed and you have more of the language, then this can be just a really good workbook for you to just write down your own notes about what this might mean for you. Okay. So again, going through and just writing these in off of the newsletter and the blog, and just sort of adding them in here yourself. Whoopsie. Sorry, trying to write and talk at the same time is pretty funny. But we're just copying this into these pages, okay? And again, if you don't understand what some of them mean, or when you look at them, they're not important, then the other thing I recommend is don't fucking write them in there. Don't make your brain think something is important if it's not. Try to just focus on one transit a week if that's all you can do, even if it's just the moon stuff, right? Like if all you can do is just follow the moon and stay in touch with that for right now, great. If you're let's say you're having a Mercury year, then all of a sudden you might be like, oh, you know what? I need to track these. Like these are important. So instead I would put here Mercury, which is in its shadow right now, by the way, in Capricorn, square Chiron, retrograde in Aries. The other thing is, like, I'm going to pick a big transit of the week. And a lot of times, it might line up with what you're looking at. So here's a whole post about this particular transit right here. So if you're like, oh yeah, I'm having a Mercury year, this is a big deal, there's a whole nother blog here that you can dig into. And these are being built, right? I don't have one for everything. Sometimes I'm not going to do every single one either. This is one that I wrote last year. And then there's another blog I wrote the year before. So just been kind of compiling them together to give you a sense of what these transits mean, right? Chiron is pretty slow moving. Here's the dates that it's been moving. Like it was in Aries when I was born, when many of us were born that are in our 40s or 50s. We're having Chiron returns now. This is how long Chiron will be in Aries, and then it will move into Taurus. Okay, Mercury squares Chiron twice a year, and then it opposes it once a year and opposes it once a year. So they have a lot of interactions, is what I'm saying. So if you're having a Mercury year and you notice something's really up whenever Mercury has an engagement with Chiron throughout the year, then you're going to want to track that. But the only way you can know that is to start writing it down and then paying attention. So taking a look at this in your chart and seeing where this is happening, writing down those keywords and kind of just, making a guess. This is a tiny little box. There are more pages in the workbook for you to write things, but the boxes are small in order to keep you brief and succinct, right? If you write a page for every single thing, then when you come back to read it, you're going to run out of time or interest. So we're trying to narrow things down. So we can do a lot of journaling and then come back intermittently once a day or throughout the week to make notes about what we noticed. And if you're having a Mercury year, you might want to write down these trines. You might find that you want to pay attention to what that and learn what this means, right? This is a foreign language to you until it's not anymore. Like for me, I couldn't write this out. I would be so frustrated if I had to write that out in a sentence. I couldn't do it anymore. But for years and years, my journals were just me writing out all the words, trying to figure these things out until I realized the shorthand and was taught the shorthand is easier. So again, write it down exactly as it is. Write it down as it's translated. You get to decide. Okay? The other thing that's really cool about this is if you wanted to use colored pencils or you wanted to really make a colorful version. Again, this is digital, so I'm limited to what kind of things I can add in. But when we look at this, I'm trying to use the colors of the planets. I'm trying to think about, their vibe and energy, trying to draw in, blending those colors together if they're having an engagement with each other. Drawing your chart and falling in love with it and making it a piece of art can really help you get a better connection with what is going on in your chart. Okay? So I think that's enough for now. Just take a look at it. Think about it, start drawing your chart. I know some of you are waiting for your workbooks, but you can draw your chart anywhere. You can definitely just start thinking about what it looks like. And then the rest of this is just, I talk about the moons, give you just a little bit of the dates and times when the moon is moving. Then these are connected to blogs that have more information about each sign. So you can really dig in to what, the keywords are. Okay. And then it talks a little bit about the moon phases. I'm going to bring back moon rituals, but it might be a little while before I get them all formatted and in here. I pretty much written 3 to 5 years of moon rituals. So that book is going to come out eventually. Right. But this just gives you the gist on each one of the moon phases and kind of what we do during that time. Okay. So that's what those are for. Oh, and just to remind you, you can buy these as stickers if you are a Sag sun with a Libra moon in your chart and you just resonate with this picture, you can buy these if you want to. And that really helps me. I use the revenue from stickers and the merch, which isn't very much. It's sometimes it's just 50 cents to go towards my scholarships and my community readings, which are offered to people under 25 and anyone who really asks for the help. Then you'll see there's a section for events and reminders, things that are going on that I just want to remind you of. If you want to register for the AstroWeathers a year ahead, it's December 15th. Again, this is mostly going to be directed at people who are in the threshold group who are doing these beta tests with me, but anyone's welcome to come and listen to me ramble on about astrology and the year ahead. We'll talk about the larger transits. Mostly we're going to fixate on Pluto moving into Aquarius for a little tiny bit. That'll probably be the main thing. But I'll also take questions. So if you have questions about any transits or information that you've heard about what's coming in 2023, there'll also be a Venus retrograde. The eclipses will start to move into Aries and Libra. So there's some stuff that is just good to know, especially if that impacts you personally in your chart. Okay, then I'm always going to offer you a special gift. Or a discount or some cool thing that I'm working on. Sometimes this will also be traded out for an art project of the week. Just depends on my mood. I know it's the holidays, so I set up gift certificates as your special for the week. So you buy one, you get one half price. Use this code. gift certificates are kind of weird. So I just wanted to kind of go over this really quickly because I get this question a lot. It's hard when you have so many different prices for things. So the main thing you want to look up is what is it going to cost this person that you want to give this gift to in order to get it. So for astrology, you just want to look at the astrology readings. You want to find the price and then also consider the shipping costs. So if you wanted, to get a reading, just an intuitive reading for $198, then you can either do 8 of the $25 quantity, right? Or you can do 2 of the $100 just to cover, if you wanted to cover shipping. So if you do $100 and you add it to the cart, then you're going to change this to 2 and you get a $200 gift certificate. And then you're going to enter the code. Now we're in the cart. Oh no, now we're in the cart. So hopefully that makes sense. And I have the different options just because if you just wanted to give somebody a $50 gift certificate, you have several options in order to be able to do that. But there are things that are different prices. So I'm trying to meet all the needs. It's tricky. If you have any questions about that, let me know. Okay. So that's pretty much the newsletter that's going to come out on Monday morning about the week ahead. Actually, I might send it out tonight, just depending on how I feel about it, how long it takes the video to load. And the video will be here. So it's kind of a weird time loop that you're reading this and you're watching the video about this thing that already happened. But there it is. I like to bend time. Any questions? Any questions, anything you need, here is the contact information right here. You can email me, you can text me, you can message me on Instagram if you really want to. I don't always get to those as quickly, especially as I'm spending less time there. But I do check them. So, but definitely email is the best option if you have a really long question. If you have a quick question, text me. I only check my messages when I'm working, so you're not going to bother me. And I would rather you sent me the question when you were having the question than wait until, I don't know, some other better time. Again, hopefully this is joyous. This will be on YouTube too. So if you're watching it on YouTube, you need to make sure and go to my website, astroartistry.com, sign up for my newsletter, the Sweet Astro newsletter, so that you can start getting these in your inbox. You can subscribe to this too, I guess, or whatever the weird kind of things you want to do to get this information in your ear holes, in your brain hole every week. These are the AstroWeathers of the week ahead. And if you are interested in getting into the next beta test or making sure that you get the information when this workbook and these pages from the workbook, are going to come to you. Sorry. Oh my goodness. Anyways, that's fine. When you're interested in, if you're interested in learning more about the book, then you definitely want to sign up for my newsletter so that I can share that with you when that comes to pass. Okay, I think that's it for now. Have a great week.